how did you kind of internalize that power? And it was obviously the script is fantastically there, Sebastian, but how did you guys talk about commanding that kind of power?
I think for me, before anything, especially with this role, it was really important to figure out who she was. Liv is a Nightingale nurse, and during that time, Nightingale nurses were seen as the purest people. They were almost higher than being a woman. During that era, women weren't their own. They didn't belong to anything. They belonged to their husband. They were sold with property, and to be a Nightingale nurse meant that you were actually listened to. And so for me, it was always interesting in this story that no matter how qualified she was, no matter how educated she was, no matter how many lives she'd saved, these men still didn't want the answer because it wasn't correct to what they were expecting. And what does that insist? It insists that she's probably even more annoyed at the fact that she's been brought out there. And to me, that was very easy. You know, she has confidence because she's been allowed to feel that way because she is entitled because of her job.
Very well put. Sebastian, this is actually based on a book by Emma Donoghue, who also wrote The Amazing Room, which was produced by Ed Guiney, who you had worked with on your film Disobedience. Tell me about your decision to work on this particular story. What was it that felt right to you as a feature for you?
Well, I read the book because Ed Guiney suggested me to read it, and he thought that for some reason I could be the right person to tell this story about, you know, this conflict happening in rural Ireland in 1862, me coming from Chile. But in a certain way, I grew up in a very green landscape in the south of Chile during dictatorship, in a very Catholic country, so I had my connections to the story. But then I read the novel and I really loved it. My first connection was with the two women at the center. Florence's character, Liv Wright, the Nightingale, the scientist, the rationalist, confronting this community of fervors, believers, somehow operating or trapped in that belief system, willing to deform reality so it fits what they believe, and up to the point that maybe a girl could die because of that. And Florence's character, you know, reason, confronting that. I thought that was very 2022, you know, faith versus science, or rationalism versus magical thinking, reality versus fake news or post-factual sort of dynamics. So the relationship between the two women was very moving, very unique, rarely seen. This sort of like sorority, more than a maternal love, is a solidarity that they find between each other. The girl trapped in this community that is willing so desperately for her to be a miracle, yeah, they have to somehow save each other, and I thought that was beautiful to portray in a film.
And this particular story is actually based on a true story of a girl in Wales, I think. But there are a number of cases after the Great Famine in Ireland where young women were starving themselves because it was a so-called miracle situation. Florence, how much reading and understanding did you have of that history, or did you prefer to approach it kind of fresh from Sebastian's screenplay?
Well, obviously I read Emma's book. It's always important to start there. Yeah, I think whenever I tackle anything that's a specific period, it's always good to know what's going on in the world at that time, and it's always good to know what the characters that you're initially playing are dealing with. For me, I keep on coming back to this era. I keep on coming back to the 1800s. I don't know why, but I'm a bit addicted apparently. And each time I've done it, I've found out, I've found a new character that is dealing with the same situations. With Lady Macbeth, she was in Northumberland dealing with being sold with a piece of property. In Little Women, they're all like 4 years apart. Little Women, Amy, that Greta wrote that speech, I just said hi to her on the outside, of Amy needing to make her own money because when she gets married, the money will belong to him. All of these struggles that these women have during an era that I don't think we can quite fathom, that they just did not have, they weren't allowed anything, and yet they were doing all of these brilliant things. And for me, the thing that I was just so excited by was understanding that this woman had a job that made her higher than any woman, and men actually listened to her. And that was my way in to the history, to the characters, to the history of Ireland. Anyway, that didn't really answer your question, but I was interested as to what was going on with the women then, and yeah, that's.
I also.
But I didn't answer anything about the fasting girl, so do you want to?
No, I mean, I know that Emma, this was a phenomenon that took place in Europe, or like during 200 years, and it was always related to young female bodies stopping eating, slash a mystical element. Today it can be considered a sort of precedent of eating disorders. But it's so interesting that there were always girls. And then the community controlling the meaning of that, which is at the center of the wonder, in a post-hunger, post-famine era in Ireland. The appearance of a girl that can live from manna from heaven, from air, is almost like a collectively generated symptom. They all want that to be real, and they are somehow using the case for their own political benefit, and that sounds familiar, no? I mean, that's so the only thing that doesn't matter is the girl herself. No one is really listening to her until Florence's character arrives and really connects with her and feels her pain and the reasons why she's doing the sacrifice.
The girl you found to play Anna, Kyla Cassidy.
Keela.
Sorry.
It's all right.
Keela Cassidy. She is just phenomenal. And she's playing this 11-year-old girl who's starving. And there's these incredible scenes between the two of you where, your character is mourning the loss of her own baby, and this pain kind of connects her in a way to being protective and wanting to save this girl's life, I feel like. And there's this incredible scene where your character cracks and tries to force feed her and shoves a tube down her throat. I can only imagine that was pretty harrowing to film.
You're like, oh no, I think I'm gonna watch that one.
I mean, trust me, this film's amazing. Don't be put off by the whole force-feeding part. But tell me about how you guys collaborated to make that scene work.
First of all, I should say that Keela, who plays the girl that came into the room, her mum actually plays her mum in the film as well. So Elaine and Keela were, they have to have this very strong relationship on camera. And on set, we essentially had the best setup because we had both mum and daughter, and also dad was there to be, her carer when Elaine was working. And it meant that we kind of had this quick dialogue of, it's really hard working, obviously, with children on set because you have to be so aware and conscious, and this film is tough, and we had to do some tough things, and I had to do some tough things to her. And what it meant was I had her mum on set, and we could just chat through it, and it didn't need to be as scary as it actually was. And she's such a professional at such a young age, and the whole family they're so keen to be there and be ready. And so it made the whole thing so much easier to come at. I don't want to do that. I don't want to, you know, be in any way feeling like I am hurting the child. I don't actually hurt her in the movie. I mean, in real life, sorry. But that's kind of how it worked, and it made it so smooth.
Sebastian, there's a really interesting device that you use in this film.
I knew this was coming.
It is curious though, right? Where you open the film with we're on a studio set, and then we go into the set, and there's Florence sitting there eating her soup on a boat on the way to Ireland, but we're in a studio, and then you frame it that way at the end. You put pan back out, and we're in the studio again. Why did you make that choice?
Well, for the pleasure of it. It's a little frame. It's a little playful thing that reminds the viewer that they will be exposed to the power of fiction, and the disbelief can be triggered in 3, 2, 1. That's how easy we believe, and that's how deeply we are prepared to believe. We need to believe. And in a story where beliefs can kill or can save lives, depending on which side of the line you're standing, in a story where the tension between rigidity and fanaticism, meaning people that have found the truth and are not willing to move from that position, versus a more scientific approach to life. Science holds in its heart doubt and question and uncertainty, therefore a certain adaptability. In that story, where we are precisely observing how the stories we tell ourselves and the stories we operate within, we co-create, we inherit, how they can become political power, or how can you find ways to choose your own story, create your own story, and reach new levels of individual freedom against the mandate of the community. I thought inviting the viewer to be actively aware of their own mechanisms of beliefs being triggered by the film, it was important, and it connected with the deeper themes of the film.
As you say in the voiceover, we are nothing without our stories, or is that
That's what
is
she
that
said.
exactly it? But yeah, what you say is it makes perfect sense. So I just want to congratulate you both on this amazing film. I'm not ashamed to tell you, it definitely made me really emotional. The ending is incredibly moving. It's a beautiful story. And congratulations. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Oh, and next up, here's Mike Fleming.